Time to introduce Bill Chamberlain. Fear, disillusionment, and anxiety. Uh, I hope I want to hear this. Bill, don't leave me too depressed. So, Bill, you're on.
I'll try not to, Harry. I will start out just running over the items in the title of the talk and just set them in relationship to where I'm going with it. But Webster says fear is an unpleasant and often strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. Disillusionment, the condition of being disenchanted, dissatisfied, or defeated in expectations of hope. The loss of faith or trust in something or someone formerly regarded as good or valuable. Anxiety, apprehensive uneasiness or nervousness, usually over an impending or anticipated ill, a state of being anxious. I think we could consider anxiety as maybe a result of the fear and disillusionment. So what is it that we may have fear of or be disillusioned by or be anxious about? I'll just run over a few things that popped up in the news recently. NBC News, Thursday, October 29th. United States hits 9 million COVID cases, sets a third single day record in a week as the election day looms. We have a dangerously low supply and critical shortage of medical gloves for healthcare workers. Continuation of problems that have plagued us since the beginning of COVID. Yep. The White House has dismantled 125 major climate and environmental policies focused on clean air, water, wildlife, and toxic chemicals. This from NPR.org, October the 16th. A new study by Stanford University researchers, this came out yesterday, that concluded that Trump rallies likely caused 30,000 new coronavirus cases and 700 additional deaths. Getting to the climate, the environment. Another tropical depression forms in the Atlantic, bringing the total to 28. And then this morning, 29 just came together in the Caribbean. It's a record. Back to the economy. The U.S. recession tracker, a model created by Bloomberg Economics, now predicts that a recession is 100% likely in the next 12 months. However, we can't officially say we're in a recession now. Traditionally, a recession is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. And some of the other concerns, back in June of 2016, the surveys indicated the economy was the major concern of the electorate. USA Today currently says that 75% are worried about election violence and hurricanes. Gallup poll lists 6 common issues: terrorism, national security, the economy, healthcare, budget deficit, immigration. So there are things that the populace is really concerned about. And in looking for some of this stuff, I ran across an article that caught my attention, taken from the Huffington Post, written by Carol Kuruvilla, titled "Climate Change, the Global Pandemic. Is This the Apocalypse?" 2020 feels like an apocalypse because it is one. The trials of 2020 are an apocalypse in the original sense of the word, some religious scholars say, because they reveal deep truths about society. Giovanni Mazzana, a professor of New Testament and early Christian studies at Harvard Divinity School, has been studying the apocalypse for years. He's taught classes about the subject, and he scoured through many ancient texts, or he has scoured through many ancient texts. That's why when Mazzana reflects on the natural disasters and social upheaval that have upended American life in 2020, he feels comfortable in giving it a label. The apocalypse is here, Mazzana insists. In fact, he believes it's always with us. Mazzana isn't talking about monstrous beasts emerging from the sea or horsemen descending from a cosmic stage to wreak havoc on the earth. The trials of 2020 are an apocalypse in the original sense of the Greek word. He claims a revelation or uncovering. This year has revealed truths about American society that can't be ignored or swept under the rug. Whether it's inequality in healthcare, racial justice, the ineptitude of the government, it's important to remember that apocalypse means revelation. It's the moment that reveals something about one's individual life or about society in general. I think this is really the moment of big revelations, not revelations in the terms of visions or prophecies, but revelations in the sense of seeing the truth of things. The events of 2020 have primed many Americans to think about the apocalypse. Google searches for the word apocalypse spiked in late March in the United States as states began to impose coronavirus-related shutdowns. The months that followed provided plenty of fodder for apocalyptic thinking. The pandemic that has upended daily life, wildfire raging on the West Coast, widespread protests, a divisive presidential election in which the incumbent has yet to fully commit to a peaceful transition of power. News stories about murder hornets, speculation about signs of life on Venus are now mere boxes to be crossed off on imagined 2020 bingo cards. Against this backdrop, Americans' private personal trauma feel even heavier, contributing to the sense that anything is possible, that the worst is yet to come. The apocalyptic imagination often awakens in periods just like this, when societies experience upheaval and uncertainty. Many scholars believe the Bible's book of Revelation, possibly the most culturally influential story of apocalypse for Americans, was originally written as resistance literature. Attributed to a man named John living at the end of the first century, the book contains vivid visions of a cosmic war between the forces of good and evil, prophesies a future in which God will judge the nations, punish evildoers, avenge his people, and establish a just new world. The book was coded yet defiant. The book was a coded yet defiant response to an exiled community to the Roman Empire's oppression of Jewish people and the destruction of Jerusalem, scholars say. Very often, these texts are written by people experiencing oppression from some power that is becoming too invasive or strongly persecuting them, Bazana says. Apocalyptic thinking can be found in the religious text of all three Abrahamic faiths, as well as in the cycles of destruction and reconstitution that appear in Buddhist and some other religious traditions. Secular visions of the apocalypse exist as well. According to Anna Maria Bounds, a sociologist at Queens College, City University of New York, who has written a book about the city's doomsday preppers. In these modern day apocalypses, divine agency is less prominent, and humans become the agent of their own destruction or salvation. These secular narratives tap into fears that people have about the fragility of modern life. Fears about the collapse of the government or the economy, the failure of technology, the threat of terrorist attacks or the effects of climate change. There's a sense of loss of control, an increased sense of anxiety about all sorts of things. From the pandemic to the wildfires, to the economic instability, to concerns about the upcoming election, all sorts of things. Popular visions of the apocalypse often deal with world-altering, cataclysmic global events. But an apocalypse can also happen to a group of people. The arrival of Europeans in North America was an apocalypse for the Native American, Bazana says, as was the experience of slavery for African Americans. Apocalyptic narratives can encourage cultural forms of resistance that demonstrate resilience in the face of great adversity. Bazana said the ghost dance of late 19th century Native American spiritual movement that imagined an end to the westward expansion was one such resistance movement, as is some of the apocalyptic speculative fiction written by Native African American writers today. For some groups, the apocalypse is a way to grapple with a perceived threat to the status quo. The apocalyptic imagination is prevalent in some facets of white evangelical support for President Trump. The religious group, used to wielding unquestioned cultural influence, is now contending with a rapidly diversifying country. Apocalyptic thinking also underpins the far right, pro-Trump conspiracy theory, QAnon. Ideas about the apocalypse persist throughout the centuries because they're a way for humans to grapple with their anxiety and about change. I think humans need mechanisms to cope with that change, Bazan says, to prepare oneself for change or to face change when it happens. The art and activism, even some of the dark humor that arises from apocalyptic thinking, is a way for people to regain a sense of control over what seems like an impossible situation. It helps people imagine that what survival would look like and what they would want to bring with them into a new post-apocalyptic world. It's about us thinking about how we can participate in the more positive rebirth of the world. It makes you turn inward, and it makes you take a productive back look at yourself and figure out the world is kind of crazy. What can I do to anchor myself? And what can I do to make a good contribution to the world? Catherine Kelly, a constructive theologian at the Theological School of Drew University, has been interested in the apocalypse since the 1980s, when she started seeing Christian apocalyptic fundamentalism work its way into the Republican Party. But more recently, she's become concerned with secular apocalypticism about climate change, becoming imbued with nihilism, as if it's too late to make any positive changes. Whether it's based in religious belief or not, thinking about the apocalypse as a final end to the world can be a dangerous simplification, Keller said, since it diminishes humans' agency to impact the course of history. 2020 has been an apocalyptically charged time, and that can be a good thing if it means that we're having our eyes opened, Keller said. The emergence of apocalyptic thinking today is a deep, ancient warning that something about the way power flows in society needs to change. The apocalypse that we're in now, if we read apocalypses faithfully, not as an end of the world, but as a radical and painful opening, there's a chance, I suspect a big last chance, to really turn our world around. But what can we do? How do we handle what's coming?
That's fine. Just, yes.
Excuse the lapse. It's easy to buy into the demonization of people you never communicate with, and those whose views you never see depicted by anyone other than adversaries. Something we need to think about when we confront people with differing views. Controlling anger. The Dalai Lama says the first drawback to anger is that it destroys your inner peace. Second is that it distorts your view of reality. If you come to understand that anger is really unhelpful, you can begin to distance yourself from anger. The words of Don Michael Ruiz in his book, The Four Agreements, might help us in our outlook of whatever happens after Tuesday. And in general, that is to be impeccable with your word. These are his four agreements that he speaks of. Be impeccable with your word, speak with integrity, say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your voice in the direction of truth and love. Do not take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victor of needless suffering, the victim of needless suffering. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions, to express what you want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. Kendall Perry addressed this very well in her last talk before the for the congregation. And last of all, the rest is always do your best. There's another quote I read across on Facebook from a group posting that I follow sometimes, mostly because of the old pictures and actually the maybe running across the words about people I know or have known. But it's called Southeastern Kentucky, Roots and All of Kentucky. And this posting was labeled Midwives of the Soul. It was taken from the words of an author, a Russian author, Elena Mikhalkova. And it's Midwives of the Soul. My grandmother once gave me a tip. In different times, you move forward, and in difficult times, you move forward in small steps. Do what you have to do, but little by little. Don't think about the future or what may happen tomorrow. Wash the dishes, remove the dust, write a letter, make a soup. You see, you're advancing step to step. Take a step and stop. Rest a little. Praise yourself. Take another step, then another. You won't notice, but your steps will grow more and more. And the time will come when you can think about the future without running. This originally appeared in a post called Ladies Pass It On, which you might find interesting. It's a blog called Ladies Pass It On by Donna Ashworth. Yeah, there's another thought expressed by the poet William Wordsworth in the early 19th century. It's called, If This Great World of Joy and Pain. If this great world of joy and pain revolve in one sure track, if freedom set will rise again, and virtue flown come back, woe to the purblind crew who fill the heart with each day's care, nor gain from past or future skill to bear and to forbear. And to close, I will quote Maya Angelou in saying, we spend precious hours fearing the inevitable. It would be wise to use that time adoring our families, cherishing our friends, and living our lives. And one more thing I wanted to say, there's the first thing I did in preparing this talk was to go back and look at previous posts on prior programs on the UCH homepage. Starting back in May with Jerry Murphy's talk about COVID-19 pandemic reflections. He hit the nail on the head. On October the 25th, Kendall Curry, her address about pausing before we speak or ask a question as to what our purpose is. Very powerful, I thought. Mike Ivey on October the 18th, The Power of Faith. We certainly could all revisit that during these next few weeks. Linda Mashburn, Two Heroes and a Heroine. These are now at least 3 exceptional people handled adversity. Jerry Murphy again, coming home to the true and higher self on October the 11th. Paul Blaney, with his talk about loss. Bob Hill, his talk about the human spirit. Darren Finney, what it takes to really listen. We could all use a refresher course in that. Steve Jett's fight for the Grand Canyon with Mr. Conservation, Dave Brown. And Eddie Smith's Life Is, as Karen Ivey described it, addressing life's problems with love and compassion instead of fear and doubt. And thank you all.
I'm using this pulpit to taking advantage of it, and I've often been told that when one is speaking to a group, you should never apologize. And I've often disobeyed that rule, so I'll do it now. I apologize for this, but I can't resist taking this opportunity. So I'd like to respond a little bit to Bill and say, channeling another person, I will say, there will be a better day. Things are going to get better. The new world is coming. The word rapture has been taken over by mean people, so I'll use the word jubilee. Jubilee is on his way. The bingo cards, we have 2 cards. One is the apocalyptic bingo card. Let's hope that last number never comes up. But the other one is the Jubilee card. And I tell you, we can punch those cards and we will win. Yes, sir. Remember the flood? That was a bad thing, but we survived. We floated above it, as we will do now. So people, I tell you, a better day is coming. And that's my closing for the service. Thank you all.